بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. طلبتنا الأعزاء، نعود لكم من جديد لاستفسال في محاضرات كليات التربية العلوم الانسانية المرحلة الثانية مادة القصة القصيرة من جامعة الانبار. حييكم أستاذ المساعد الدكتور أحمد حميد دكتوراه في الأدب الانجليزي. Actually, we have to say something about the way we present the first time about how we can understand the short story. Just to make a sort of review, you remember with the first 2-3 lectures we have made an introduction about the way we deal with the short story. We have to read it as quick as possible, once, twice, and sometimes we need 3 times reading in order to know what's going on, what's the plot, how many characters do we have, and then to read it for the sake of appreciation and analysis in order to be able to express yourself as far as the content of the short story is concerned. Now I need you to remember all these things that we have dealt with in details and to follow me dealing with the first short story that we are going to expose just now, that is The Open Window by Saki. First of all, we have the text here, and I'm going to read the text line by line, and then you have to take notes about things that are going to be raised, and then to keep in mind what's going on, to be connected all together at the end of the lecture, to be able to talk about, to express yourself, to use English actually as simple as possible. Now, keep in mind that The Open Window is really an interesting story. It is really dynamic, that you can follow and you can guess what's going on easily. So the start of this story: my aunt will be down presently, Mr. Nuttall, said a very self-possessed young lady of 15. So here we have the first character, the first appearance of the first character. Till now we don't know her name, but it is self-possessed young lady of 15, and she is telling someone who is the second character, that is Mr. Nuttall. So we have Mr. Nuttall, and we have another character, which is, or who is a lady of 15. In the meantime, you must try and put up with me. This is actually a statement said by this 15 years lady, and she told Mr. Nuttall, you have to be with me. Just a sort of preparation that something is going to happen between the two. Frampton Nuttall endeavored to say the correct something which should duly flatter the niece of the moment, without unduly discounting the aunt was to come. What is meant by niece, you know? Yes. Yes, بنت الأخ, بنت الأخت أو بنت الأخ, we call it niece and nephew إلى ابن الأخ أو ابنة الأخت. Good. So, privately, he doubted more than ever whether these formal visits on a succession of total strangers would do much towards helping the nerve care which he was supposed to be undergoing. So this is the reason why he comes actually to this place for nerve care. He was suffering of certain illness that is concerned with his nervous system, and he is going just to join such type of place for stranger that he comes to. He was supposed to undergo, so he will stay there for the sake of nervous care. I know how it will be, his sister had said when he was preparing to migrate to this rural retreat. So he is going to join this rural retreat. Who sent him to this rural retreat? Yes, his sister. So his sister
advised him to go there for the sake of nervous curl. You will bury yourself down there and not speak to a living soul, and your nerves will be worse than ever from moving. I shall just give you letters of introduction to all the people I know there. Some of them, as far as I can remember, were quite nice. This is actually an intentional 2-3 sentences just to prepare the mind of the reader to check what type of people he is going to meet there. So it is supposed to be a calm and quiet place for, let us say, confrontation, let us say, for relaxation, and so on. She will provide him with a letter of introduction, just to introduce him, to introduce Mr. Nettle to the people who are living there in this rural retreat. Frampton wondered whether Mr. Sableton, the lady to whom he was presenting one of the letters of introduction, came into the nice division. When she told him that you will meet nice people, he was asking himself whether the woman that he was sent for, whether she was nice as his sister told or not. So we will discover that who will be nice with him and he will be not nice with him. Keep in mind this. Now, the second part of the story. Do you know many of people round her? Asked the niece, when she judged that they had had sufficient silent communion. This is the first introduction of what will happen with him by Vera. Vera was real intelligent, smart. She asked him, do you know someone here? Just preparing the mind to what will happen next. Hardly a soul, said Frampton, as if he doesn't know anyone. And this will help her to fabricate, the type of lie, actually. My sister was staying here at the rectory, some 4 years ago. So his sister was at the same place years back, 4 years ago. And she gave me a letter of introduction to some of the people here. He made the last statement in a tone of distinct regret, as if he was feeling shy because he doesn't know anyone here. He just came to this place to have some rest, but only with a letter of introduction provided by his sister that or who was spending certain time or period of time 4 years or 3 years back. Then you practically nothing about my aunt, pursued the self-possessed young lady. Why she is asking him like or such type of questions? Just she wants to be sure that he doesn't know anyone, and she can fabricate whatever she has in her mind with this man, Mr. Nettle. So when she asked him, only her name and address, admitted the caller. So he told her that he knows nothing but the name and the address. He was wondering whether Mrs. Sableton was in the married or widowed state. An undefinable something about the room seemed to suggest masculine habitation. So he was wondering, he was just to be sure, where is Mr. Sableton, or what was Mr. Sableton is, because he doesn't know her before. He only knows her name and the address. And as you remember, as I told before, he was actually joining this place for rest. Now, Vera becomes sure that Mr. Nettle knows nothing about the place or people within the house. And this is actually a good chance for her to make a trick. You see, her great tragedy happened just 3 years ago. This is the first lie told by Vera to Mr. Nettle. And when I say her great tragedy, she is talking about whom? She is talking about Mrs. Sableton, that she has a tragedy, and this tragedy happened 3 years back, said the child. That would be since your sister's time, her tragedy. So she connected things with the last visit done by his sister to the same place. Asked Frampton, somehow in this restful country, sport tragedies seem out of place. You may wonder why we keep that window wide open on October afternoon, said the niece, indicating a large front window that opened to a lawn. Now she is going to connect what is what is told by her, that what type of a tragedy Mrs. Sableton has, and she connects such type of tragedy with the reason why they left the open window, even though it was cold on October. Yes, just to keep him actually thinking of what's going on. 3 years back, she had a tragedy. And what is the connection with the window? Because she will make use of why they left the window open. It's quite warm for the time of the year, said Frampton. He actually here makes a type of compliment as if he doesn't care about whether the window is open or not, because he do believe it is related to the type of weather at that time. But she is meant something else. There is something hidden in her mind. But has the window got anything to do with the tragedy? So there is a connection between the tragedy of Mr. Sableton and why the window is open, as a type of fabrication presented by Vera. Out through that window, she is going to tell him that type of connection between the tragedy and the open window. Our thought that window 3 years ago to a day, her husband and her 2 young brothers went off. Now Vera told Mr. Nettle that Mrs. Sableton's husband and her 2 young brothers went off for their day's shooting. So they left. She is actually fabricating the story. So we have a story within a story. She is fabricating the story of the tragedy of Mr. Sableton. Why she has such type of tragedy? Because her husband and her 2 young brothers actually went off for their day's shooting. They never came back. She told Mr. Nettle that these 3 men never came back. And crossing the moor to their favorite snipe shooting group, they were all 3 engulfed in a treacherous piece of rock. So this type of place, actually, she just made him imagine that they are in a problem 3 years back, and they disappeared and no one came back. This is the type of tragedy Vera fabricated to Mr. Nettle. It had been that fateful wet summer, you know, and the planes that were safe in other years gave way suddenly without warning. She now just trying to convince Mr. Nettle that these 3 men will not come back again. And this is a typical, or this is a type of a tragedy that Mrs. Sableton is actually suffering of. So their bodies were never recovered. They didn't find them. That was the dreadful part of it. Here is the child voice lost its self-possessed note and became flattering human. Poor aunt always think that they will come back someday. Now, she is again convincing him that there is something wrong with Mrs. Sableton, psychologically. Why? Because she herself actually expects them to come back one day. Just again to prepare the mind of Mr. Nettle to accept, out of imagination, the appearance of the 3 men again. They and the little brown spaniel that was lost with them, and walked in at that window. And she was nominating that this window is open because the ant wants or expecting them to come from the window, and they will be under her sight. Then that's why the window is kept open every evening till it is quite dusk. Poor dear ant, she has often told me how they went out. Now she is explaining that the ant is poor, and she is expecting out of her imagination these three men to be back again out of this window. Her husband with his white waterproof coat over his arm, and Rooney, this is another character, her youngest brother, I mean Mrs. Sableton's youngest brother, his name is Rooney, singing Bertie, why do you bond, as he always did detest her because she said it got on her nerves. So, just to sum up, Mr. Nuttall comes to this place for the sake of nerve care, and unfortunately he met Vera, 15 years lady, and when she knows that he doesn't know anything about the place or people who are living in the house, she was capable of make a trick for Mr. Nuttall, make use of his psychological state, and she convinced him that the problem is with her aunt, Mrs. Sableton, because of her tragedy. What type of tragedy Mrs. Sableton has? The tragedy of the disappearance of her husband and her two young brothers. Vera convinced Mr. Nuttall that they left home for shooting 3 years ago, but the aunt expecting them to come one day throughout this window. So, do you know now, actually the aunt will come, Mrs. Sableton. Do you know sometimes on a still quiet evening like this, I almost get a creepy feeling that they will all walk in through that window. This was the first sentence said by Mrs. Sableton. To whom? To Mr. Nuttall. And what she told actually was the same what Vera said. That's why he believed what is going on, or what is told by Vera. Because the aunt, Mrs. Sableton, unconsciously told him that why she left the window open like this. She broke off with a little shudder. It was a relief to Frampton when the aunt bustled into the room with a whirl of apologies for being late in making her appearance. I hope Vera has been amusing you, she said. Because the aunt knows very well the type of girl that Vera is, because she is playful. So she told him, I hope Vera has been amusing you. She has been very interesting, he said. She was nice. Till now, he doesn't know that he is in a problem, or she is fabricating actually a problem for him out of her intelligence. She has been very interesting. I hope you don't mind the open window. This is the problem. Well, Mrs. Sableton asked Mr. Nuttall that I hope you don't mind the open window. And he was prepared. His mind is prepared to accept what's going on with Mrs. Nuttall, even though Mrs. Nuttall doesn't know actually what is happened there between Vera and Mr. Nuttall. So she unconsciously asked him, if you don't mind leaving this window open. And this is actually make Mr. Nuttall make a connection between what is told by Vera about the aunt and what is told by Mrs. Sableton. I hope you don't mind the open window, said Mrs. Sableton briskly. My husband and brothers will be home directly from shooting. She told the same story told by Vera. But Vera told him that they were left 3 years ago. You see? So they left 3 years ago, but it was not true. They all left at the same day, and usually they will come back the same day, but it might be at night. So my husband and brothers will be home directly from shooting, and they always come in this way. So she is expecting them to come. Yes. They have been out for a snipe in the marshes today. And this is true. What is told by Mrs. Sableton is true, because they go to the marshes today, not 3 years back as Vera told him. So they will make a flying mess over my poor carpets. So like you, Mansfield, isn't it? She writes the cheerful about the shooting and the scarcity of birds and the prospects for that in the winter. To Framinton it was all truly horrible. He made a desperate but only partially successful effort to turn the talk on the less ghastly topic. Why it is ghastly like this? This is because the type of fabrication told by Vera. He was cautious that his host was giving him only a fragment of her attention. You see why? Because she is expecting them to come back, and her eyes were constantly straying past him to the open window. Mrs. Sableton was watching where? Yes, she was watching the window, expecting them to come back again. So Mr. Nuttall believes that she was not paying attention to his attendance, but she was busy with something else. Now it was certainly an unfortunate coincidence that he should have paid his visit on this tragic anniversary. And you know why he comes, but actually he didn't find the intention behind his visit to this type of home. So the doctors agreed in order to complete rest, an absence of mental excitement, and avoidance of anything in the nature of violent physical exercise. And now it's Framinton. He is still explaining why he comes to this place. Who labored under the literally whispered delusion that total strangers and changed acquaintances are hungry for the least detail of one's elements of infirmities. These cause and cure on the matter diet, they are not so much in agreement, he continued. So he keeps on telling Mrs. Sableton the reason why he comes to this house. No, said Mrs. Sableton in a voice which only replaced a yawn at the last moment. They should suddenly brighten into alert attention, but not to what Frampton was saying. Here they are at last. This is just a type of shock for Mr. Nuttall. Why? Because they came back. Yeah, this is the type of climax as you know about the definition of a climax. This is the highest point of tension. When Mrs. Sableton saw them coming back through the window, and she announced that here they are at last. She cried, just in time for tea. You see? And don't they look as if they were muddy up to the eyes? They were muddy with very, very dirty clothes because of mud. They were shooting in the marshes, and it is usually to become like this. And this will help Mr. Nuttall actually to believe what is told by Vera, that they will come like ghosts. 3 years ago, you see, she told him that they left 3 years ago, and they will come like this, like ghosts. Framinton shuddered slightly and turned towards the niece with the look intended to convey sympathetic comprehension. When Mrs. Sableton told him they are back, he was actually directing his two eyes towards the niece, towards Vera, as if he is sympathizing with Mrs. Sableton because she feels wrong and she is completely in a type of tragedy, expecting them to come back. The child was starting out through the open window with a dazed horror in her eyes. So to convince him that he was in trouble, she was gazing like this. She opens her eyes towards the open window as if she is expecting a type of horror is going to happen because of the reappearance of these three men. In a chill shock of nameless fear, Frampton swung round in his seat and looked in the same direction. So he was under control, but to see what's going on and what is told by Vera and Mrs. Sableton, the deep twirling three figures, we were talking across the lawn towards the window. They all carried guns under their arms because they are coming back from shooting, and this is usually to have guns under their arms, and one of them was additional burdened with a white coat hung over his shoulders. You see, a tired brown spaniel kept close at their heels. Noiselessly they neared the house, and then a hoarse young voice chanted of the dusk, "I said, Bertie, why do you bound?" So Frampton grabbed wildly at his stick and hat. The whole door, the gravel drive, and the front gate were dimly noted stages in his headlong retreat. A cyclist coming along the road had to run into the hedge to avoid an imminent collision. So Frampton grabbed wildly at his stick and hat. He was not believing what's going on because he do believe that they are nothing but ghosts, and it is only a tragedy of Mr. Sableton, and he wants just to run away from this horrible occasion that he is put on. "Here we are, my dear," said the bearer of the white Macintosh, coming in through the window, fairly muddy, but most of it's dry. "Who was that who bolted out as we come up? A most extraordinary man, Mr. Nettle," said Mrs. Sableton. "Could only talk about his illness and dashes off without a word of goodbye or apology when you arrived." So Mrs. Sableton told him that while Mr. Nettle runs away, while he was incapable of having a time with you, and he was not able to apologize for his leaving in such a way while you arrived. And she told him that he was ill, or he was sick, and this is the reason why he comes here to the hell. So one would think he had seen a ghost, as if he saw a ghost. Why? Because what is told by Vera, because he do believe that they are lost and never come back. But when they came back with a muddy clothes, yes, he believes that they are only ghosts. "I expect it was the spaniel," said the niece calmly. Shuf, calmly, bihidu. She didn't tell them that I told him blah blah blah, etc. No, she told them just again. She is make another lie actually on the family. She told him that Mr. Nettle runs away because of the spaniel, the type of dog of shooting, let us say, shooting dog. Said the niece calmly. "He told me he had a horror of dogs." So Vera told them the reason why he runs away. She told them that he told me that he had a horror of dogs. He afraid he was once hunted into a cemetery somewhere in the back of the canyon by a pack of prairie dog and had to spend the night in a newly dug grave with the creatures snarling and growling or flaunting just above him. Now she convinced her family that the wrong is not with her, that the wrong with Mr. Nettle himself because he's afraid of eating dogs. Enough to make anyone lose their nerve. And this is the reason why he lost his nerve. So romance at short notes was her specialty. This end actually can sum up the type of a plot, the type of story that we have dealt with, that romance actually was her specialty. It means that Vera makes such type of a story out of her imagination and romance. Thank you very much. We hope to meet you again in another lecture. Thank you.